6:33, and given that we have remote participants, I'm going to take a vocal roll call, I guess you'd call it. So, Irv Rhodes,
Here.
Sarah Marshall,
Here.
Deb Leonard,
Here.
and Bridget Hines here. So the first order of business tonight is public comment. So if you have public comment, please feel free. Come up to the chair up front, and you have 3 minutes.
I noticed that Vincent O'Connor, 175 Summer Street in Amherst, and I noticed that one aspect of your agenda, the new business, was a bullying item, that adopting a policy. And I just want to say, as a complete outsider to a situation, that what I observed when I gave a parent a ride to the administrative offices here, who thought she had a 15-minute appointment with the superintendent and came out of the building about an hour and a half later to find me still in the car waiting to give her a ride home, who had brought a very, given the few details I know, troubling bullying problem for her, that affected her children. I just want to say that it is truly inspiring to have an administration to see the transformation from an administration who would not even listen to its own staff people, much less a parent, be replaced by an administration whose leader will actually talk to parents, listen to them, and assist them to try to do what they think is the best thing for their families, their children. And it is, I think that we ought to take a moment and appreciate what a change in this district such a thing is. And I hope that this is not the only aspect of the educational experience at the elementary level, and this was an elementary student, that we will see transformed. And I want to appreciate, I had faith in the superintendent. I watched her interviews and so forth, and I assured the parent that she would be well received, but I had no idea that I'd be waiting in the car for an hour and a half. I think that we ought to be extremely happy that such a transformation is taking place in our schools.
Thank you, Vince. Sorry, that was a little loud. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none. So I'm serving as chair tonight in the absence of Jennifer Chow, and I think it just brought to my mind how dedicated and consistent Jennifer is, and how we've seen her here week after week, across time, across all sorts of difficult circumstances. So I just wanted to put my thoughts with her while I'm here in this seat in her stead tonight. And then one thing that we had talked about was just at this moment, I think it's really important for this committee to reaffirm our district's commitment to supporting, protecting, and educating every single one of our students, whether we're talking about regardless of gender identity, gender, sex, sexual orientation, race, religion, ethnicity, disability, national origin, or immigration status. I want to specifically speak to students and their families who are LGBTQIA, who are immigrants who live with disabilities, or who are gender nonconforming or feel any way vulnerable or targeted at this moment. The actions of the federal government don't reflect the approach of this school district. Here, you belong, you're welcome, you are cared for, and you make our community better and stronger. So I wanted to put that forward. The second thing is that we have a policy in place. It's J11, protection of undocumented students. And this policy specifically prohibits Immigration and Customs Enforcement from entering district policy or accessing students without a valid judicial warrant. And we have a protocol to provide our students the best protections possible under law in such a circumstance. And so I wanted to state that as well. On other unrelated and much less substantial updates, we've made a small shift on BCG. Deb Leonard will be sitting on BCG in place of me, and I will switch with her for JCPC. So, and that's just due to a scheduling difference. So, that's all I have for updates at this time. Do school committee members have any updates or that they want to make?
Sarah does.
Sarah?
Thank you. So speaking of JCPC, you and I attended the first meeting of that committee almost 2 weeks ago, and we will have our second meeting tomorrow. We don't know yet, or at least I don't know yet, what requests the elementary schools have in for capital needs, but hopefully we'll see that soon and can report back. And secondly, I'm sorry to say that this morning, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education approved the PVC ICS expansion, enrollment expansion request. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Deb?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I have a couple of updates. The elementary school building project, elementary school building committee met, and the building is going forward as planned, even though there was a delay in getting started due to a bid challenge that was overturned. So about, let's see, early this month, the groundbreaking began, and there's a whole lot going on in terms of making sure that the process moves forward as quickly as possible, especially given the fact that they're now doing this in colder weather than anticipated. But thanks to that big layer of dirt that they put on top of the site that served as a blanket, things are better than you might expect. They believe that the actual steel will be going up at the beginning of March with a topping off ceremony, which is oftentimes like a big photo op for everybody involved, sometime late March, early April. So look forward to that for the community. This is a long time coming, and we're looking forward to that building being completed in the fall of 2026 with some continuing demolition of the remaining building following that. But we're still on track, I guess. Principals have been getting questions about it, so there are photos, and they will be updating the website, and perhaps we'll get a little bit of a presentation from the town counselors involved. And then in terms of the first BCG budget coordinating group meeting on February 6th, I think it was, there wasn't a whole lot new to report except for what is now old news, which is the town gave both schools guidance that they would be able to provide a 3.5% increase instead of a 3% increase from the prior year, which still leaves us in an enormous hole. And then the next BCG meeting where we will continue to have these conversations will be March, beginning of March. My computer is not live for some reason. So I'm not really sure how that fits into the timeline. Obviously, our draft budget is out. We have budget hearings and we will have votes. So I really don't see how the BCG fits into all that, but maybe I'll find out. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. That's great news about the elementary school building, and I think that that leaves us in a situation, since we've got two representatives from Crocker Farm in the audience, that JCPC would probably be more focused on Crocker Farm this year, which is exciting. So it's time for our superintendent's update.
Awesome. You doing good? Yeah. Okay. So before I start the updates, I usually start with our 3 priorities. Excuse me, I am getting over another wonderful sinus issue, so my voice may crack in and out. But as always, student safety and well-being, healing and stabilization of the district, and data and accountability for all. Couple things in terms of Amherst is, the first thing is there have been some parents and other community members who have asked about a situation that came before the school committee about a few weeks ago. I just wanted to go into the fact that I am investigating the situation. We are also cooperating with the appropriate authorities and with the school to determine what occurred, what are some adequate next steps. But that, and that happened at Fort River, that prompted a discussion around the promotion of parental conduct and safety, and how not just parents but community members, anyone that comes to our campus, what's our expectation around that? And so we have worked and are currently working to develop a caregiver code of conduct for district families and community members. The priority is on student and staff safety, establishing that individuals should be treated with a level of civility and respect. I know that a lot of times there are discrepancies around communication, and, you know, passions and purpose and emotions may flare, but we still should have, you know, an understanding of how do we truly operate on our school campuses, because our children are always watching. And so we want to be the best example for our students. We want to ensure that the adults who are on our campus all understand how do we engage, what do we do, and so we're working on that, and we'll bring that forward to the committees. Inside an Amherst classroom, and so under the guidance of Fort River physical education teacher Kalia Kaiser, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students took to the snow for a fun and engaging cross-country skiing lesson. They had students glided across the field and down the scenic back path behind the school, embracing the challenge of this exciting winter sport. The one thing that I would say that I think sometimes individuals don't understand is that there's a lot of learning that happens in physical education, and it's not just about the body and health, but there is reading, critical thinking, like all of the skills that we want to put forth, perseverance, that's taught in the PE classes, and it really makes me very excited when I go there. At Wildwood, students in 4th grade have been working with Amherst College students to prepare and study Raoul Colon's illustration in preparation for a field trip later this month. And this is around the Carlisle Museum held at Amherst College. And at Crocker Farm, students in Mrs. Coltrad's kindergarten class have been exploring, and I probably butchered that, so I'm so sorry because I'm better at first names, exploring the process of making maple syrup. And so our kindergartners, with the guidance from their teacher, have explored and took on a task of tapping several maple trees behind their school and learning firsthand how sap flows and is collected. And so you're never too young to get into the different aspects of problem solving, but also critical thinking. And we're very excited to see them gain a deeper understanding of the natural process that's turning sap into sweet syrup. So I'm hoping that we will get a little pancake breakfast, hint, hint, to the leadership in the audience. But it's truly a great opportunity. And so it is Black History Month, and so what we want to do is highlight how has our Amherst schools been celebrating and honoring and looking at Black leaders, voices, and community action through instruction, hands-on lessons, and various guest speakers. It's been great at Cracker Farm. Fourth grade students made a paper quilt of African American history figures to weave together leaders and inspirations throughout African American history. And you can see it pictured up above. At Wildwood, they continued in their 13th year of doing the African American History Month read-in. I welcomed community members into the school. They read to students. They taught Black history through song and dance, and they discussed their experience with racial barriers. And it was quite touching because I was invited to come in, and Allison recognized me as being the first African American superintendent in the district, and how she pronounced it is from the first African American female principal to and so it was really touching. Or first African, and so it was an opportunity for the students to and it was quite interesting. But I really appreciated the opportunity and to engage with the staff that way, and to see the community members come in. Varied ages, experience, and so it was wonderful because every class had an opportunity to engage in this way. Fort River is holding its monthly community meeting this Friday, where students in the 5th grade will present as a part of their Black History Month celebration. So parents, make sure you make your way to the schools. Go ahead. HR pop-ups, human resources they started, I believe, was it January? In January, human resources pop-ups where they actually go to each one of the schools and they provide, guidance, support. They're there for listening, and it actually helps because one of the things is that we are rebuilding trust and healing of the district, and HR has been working. The whole team goes out and they spend hours at the site and they engage with staff. So I believe they did the morning one month and they did midday last month. So next month they're going to do like in the afternoon. Amherst district events. This is the calendar for March and April, and we're going to update this for each meeting, but we want to make sure that we know what's coming up district wide. And as you can see, line dancing party at Wildwood. It ends at spring break. There are some things that are coming up in between. I have to finalize it with the principals. For example, the kindergarten night and some other activities that are happening at the various schools. So please, community, please pay attention to your school calendars. If you haven't signed up for Parent Square, please do so. It's very important. Our budget hearing for Amherst is scheduled for Thursday at 6:30 p.m. here in the high school library and via Zoom. So it is hybrid. We are engaging, asking the community to come out, engage, listen, ask your questions, and help us. This is not a one-stop effort. This is not just the district. This is us together, and we serve each other. So we want to make sure that we hear from you and we get your input as we develop and the school committee considers the budgets. And lastly, as we head into March, I am already working with my team to promote a new theme for next month, and the team will be announced in a newsletter. But for now, I'd like to share a quote from Calvin Coolidge, and it is, "All growth depends upon activity. There is no development physically or intellectually without effort, and effort means work." And so we can't do this alone, but anything without work will not move forward. So that's the superintendent's update for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Z. So on to just a few quick points of business. The first one is the minutes for Tuesday, January 21st. And I'm wondering if everyone's had a chance to look them over, if they can share any changes, and then we could vote. All right. Not hearing any alterations, or how do you vote on the minutes of January 21st?
I don't
Yes,
think we have a motion yet.
Oh, we have to make a motion. Okay.
I move to accept the minutes of February 20th as written in the documents.
All right, I'll second. All right, thank you, Sarah. Irv, how do you vote? Yes?
yes, I did.
Okay, Sarah?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Deb?
Yes.
All right, so those are approved. The next thing are our warrants. Deb, can you read the warrants?
I thought we didn't have to read the warrants.
We don't
anymore.
have to read them anymore? Okay, great. So what do we do?
We say they're warrants and
Okay.
they're
Move on.
attached.
The warrants are attached to the meeting agenda, and the final thing that we have for is to accept the gifts, and we have a few very generous gifts here. Money to the Crocker Farm Discretionary Fund for $10, $1,000 for Wildwood Elementary Social Justice Education from the Roger Wallace Excellence in Teaching Award Foundation, another one for Fort River from the Roger Wallace Foundation for the same, for $1,000. And the League of Women Voters has given money to Fort River for civic engagement, women's and ethnic studies books, materials and foundations, and finally $300 from Joan and Robert McDonald for a camp scholarship fund in honor of Susan Viegard. So that's a total of $3,060 in gifts. Thank you to all of those generous donors. It's very meaningful to put that money forward. Thank you.
So I move
I
to
move
it.
that we
Okay.
accept those gifts as you
Perfect.
listed them.
Second.
All right. Irv,
Yes,
Sarah,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I am a wholehearted yes. All right, so we're going to move on to the discussion of the BRIM reporting system for bullying and harassment.
No. Give us 1 second so we can attach it. I'm sorry, Sarah and Irv. Sarah and Irv, do you have both attachments?
No, I don't. Were they just uploaded?
Maybe if you have to log in.
They were.
I don't have it either.
Hold on. There's nothing under Brim.
Yeah, I'm not seeing. She's seen it on her computer, but it's not attached on public live. So she's gonna email it straight to you.
I didn't see anything
Yeah.
attached.
Here she, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna be sending you 2 PowerPoints, one from myself and one from the school team that they're gonna walk through this evening. And so you'll get that right now, and then we'll go ahead and talk about what occurred. So first of all, I'd like to start off by saying that when this is not just going to be about BRIM, it'll also be about our educator handbook. And when I came into the district and I started, one of the things that I know was clearly expressed by the committees was the fact that, y'all coming up? You could come up, yeah. Was the fact that we needed to take what previously happened was not to happen again. So in terms of bullying and how we work on addressing harassments and everything else. We implemented BRIM as a part of our effort to build trust and improve the accountability and enhance student safety. One of the things that came forward was it was a request through the regional committee for us to present the data and have full transparency, and not just the regional committee, but also in some of our caucus meetings. For example, the LGBTQIA plus caucus, they also asked for us to, share and just be transparent with it. One of the things that ended up happening with the release of the report was there was a line that talked about compliance, and it really is not about compliance. The line which reflected, and it was corrected, was to speak about the fact that in our districts, each school, even though we have centralized platforms, each school based on their culture and how things happen, report things just a little bit differently. And so when we walk through the overarching review this evening, even when we talk about how educator handbook is used at the various schools, I'm going to point out specific examples this evening. And so I did have a direct conversation with two principals. One was Principal Shay Derek, and the other one was Dave from Summit, because I think the line came off rather, it wasn't intended to disrespect the schools. And so that's why it was reissued. And I did have that conversation and formally apologize for how it was presented. And then it also opened up the opportunity for us to converse on what happens in the different cultures, because it's not that there's nothing or no bullying happening at Cracker Farm or no issues happening. It's that they handle it just a little bit differently, or they report it a little bit differently, or how things are used. So as we walk through this data today, we'll have that discussion, and then I'm going to hand it over to the school leadership team, because I think what came from it is what is happening at Cracker Farm and how do they handle it. And I think I can quote the words that Derek told me the day when we had a discussion. It's not like there's not conflict, right? It's how they, in their culture, in their environment, address it, they shift it, they work with their students. And when you go to Cracker Farm, you may think that a principal is always in the school or in a classroom. But what you'll find is you'll find a leadership team that is walking with their students, who understand their students, who may even be on the playground with their students, because sometimes children have an extra burst of energy that may be hard to control in a classroom, but may just need a quick 5-minute walk through and conversation for them to grow and change. And so I think this was a great opportunity when the chair approached to ask, how did I want to address this? I said, I think it's an opportunity for the school leadership to talk about what they do for the community to hear, and to talk about what they experience through their lens. So we're going to walk through this. So as of, we updated the overall BRIM data, and this is not just for the schools. So as of February 3rd, when we were asked, I pulled it. Overall in Amherst, there were 10 reportings. And let me explain this to the community. The way how BRIM is used right now is for individuals to submit how they feel, like their incident that they would like investigated of bullying or harassment. It is not, and it is not currently set up for the reporter, the investigator, to put in the reports. So I need to clarify that we are working, or we are going to work to update it so that an investigator can put in a report. So there are multiple avenues, and that's what that line had to be changed. There are multiple avenues for bullying or incidents of harassments to be reported. One includes a checklist that was in place prior to and that we currently have. So if an individual makes a verbal report of bullying, then the investigator would use the checklist. But that checklist currently is not stored in BRIM. And so there are incidents of bullying that may not be reflected in the BRIM software and platform. And that's why we as districts or district leaders have to work to update our protocols so that it is clear. So there's always going to be kind of like a misalignment of things, because our current protocols, our current ways that we do things don't align really currently to our resources, and we are working to fix that. And so in our detailed BRIM data, yes, please, look for the finger. All right, so what we see, for example, of that 10, what we're doing, and I know it's kind of small, so we printed it out for everyone, and it'll be attached, is like we're looking at the incident status. So I've had individuals reach out to me and say, what does closed unfounded mean? Closed unfounded means that that the investigation took place, it was closed, and it wasn't found to be bullying. But what you'll see from this report is there's comments in there, no bullying found. The location is there and the behavior not listed. So for each one of these, what you'll see is, for example, in progress. There's one in progress, and then you'll see what the steps are, what the reviews are, and what's happening. So we're still working to kind of clean up how it moves, but you see that we're looking at, we don't just look at closed, unfounded, or what, it also talks about what were the next steps an investigator did? How did we move that? Action taken, action not required. So there's a lot of data that we gather. The step that we have to fix now is for investigators to also be able to store their investigation that was verbally given to them or sent to them outside of this platform into the platform. So we can have a better one-stop shop system. So we also have educator handbook in the districts, right? And so the educator handbook is how it was explained to me when I came in, is basically a teacher reporting platform, right? Where teachers can put in around what's happening with teachers or staff can put in what's happening around different behaviors that they're seeing. So it's not specific to bullying or harassment, but teachers actually use this to communicate with the guidance staff, the school staff around what's happening. So right now, and this is where I talk about discrepancies, right? So again, use of platforms. If you look at this, one school has a single digit, one school has triple digits, and one school has 4 digits, right? Now, we reached out to Wildwood's principal, Allison, and said, hey, is this off? Now, there is a little bit of a discrepancy because her platform shows about 800 incidents, but our platform at the district shows 1,100. So again, cleaning up data and being very honest and transparent with what's going on. Her school uses Educator Handbook as a communication tool. So they actually communicate, talk about like, hey, this may be happening. So it's actually a tool that they use to communicate the different behaviors amongst the staff, to provide updates. So their numbers are a lot larger. Crocker is going to talk about how they may not use this platform. They actually have other tools that they use at their site that may not be a district-based tool that we can look into, but it's a tool that they use, and it's one that works for their culture and their building. And then you'll see like Fort River sits in the middle where it has about 160 incidents that's reported. Go ahead. Okay, so that's our last slide. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transition over to Derek. We're going to pull up Derek's present. So Derek can talk about Crocker. Him and Alicia can talk about Crocker and what's happening and what does it look like? Because I don't think any elementary school anywhere on this planet can say they don't have incidents or they don't have conflict or they don't have issues that arise. What they will say is that based on the culture, the climate within their school, how they approach it is different. And I think I'm very grateful to Derek and Alicia for coming this evening and presenting and speaking around. How does that look at Crocker?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well. Hi, Arab. Hi, Sarah, in the distance. Good to see you. Deb and Bridget, good to see you. I'm having a hard time not going back to the slide from the slides from before. Do you mind if you just go back for a second? But perhaps it might cloud things a little, but anyway. I think Dr. Herman actually presents a fantastic slide because what you're going to see from us in a few seconds is you're going to see some data. Perhaps we've got a slide that we'll show in a few seconds that will show some data that we took some from, I think, our 2013 or 14 platform, because Crocker Farm actually worked there, so I will brag about it a little bit. We were the first school to practice the thing way back, maybe, I don't know how many years ago, but certainly maybe 2010, 11. And you'll see a slide in a few minutes that shows 500 odd reports that we got in one sort of given year. And the slide may show a little bit of similar to this, where these things took place. But really what then you'll see is then what did we do to actually resolve those challenges that we were finding, whether it be in the hallway or whether it be in the cafeteria. and it might sound pretty straightforward, but that's pretty much how it is. The issue with the EH, and I think I agree with what Dr. Herman said there, and I'll get to our presentation in a second, is that the challenge about using it as a communication tool is that this data has longevity in terms of following students as they go places. So certainly we've run into a little bit of a challenge in thinking about what happens with this data, and then how does some other school, where perhaps it's a middle school, interpret this data in a way that perhaps, and this is where the alignment, I think Dr. Herman is exactly correct, it needs to come to a better place, right? Because I think the purpose of EH really is this, and I was reading some of their stuff again today. It's really to help the sort of consistent application of school rules, right? And I think EH is a document that is used with sort of former PBIS type schools, and we were a PBIS school. We kind of don't call ourselves that anymore because we don't need to. And it's similar with EH. We had 500 odd reports in 2012-13. We're not going to have that many now because we have so many things in place where we don't have 50 or 100 physical contacts over a period of time. But I'll get to that in a second. But this is a fantastic slide that helps show this. So let me I'll go real quick because I know you're probably don't want to be here for terribly long. But so again, I work at Crocker Farm. I've been there a long time. I worked in this building for 5 years before that. I worked in another building for 8 years before that. I think 15 at Crocker. I love Crocker Farm. I know there's a lot, and I appreciate Bridget's talking earlier about some of the nonsense that's going on in the world right now. I think Crocker Farm is thriving. I'm just going to say that. And I don't mean that, and I say it with all humility. I come from a place in the world where humility is important, but we are thriving. We've got 54 kindergarten kids this year. 51 of them are our kids, 3 are school choice. I know you're all talking about school choice, I think tonight, or maybe not. 51 kids at Crocker Farm are our kids. When I say our, they live in the Crocker Farm district. That's a testament to, I think, a thriving school, right? We have very bright, smart, highly trained teachers who do 2 things really well. They do lots of things really well. If I only say 2, I'll get in trouble tomorrow when I go back. But I'll tell you 2 things that they do really well that are connected to this piece here, and you know, Megan can flip through a few slides in a second. But one, I mean, other than being bright and smart and whatever, our people really deeply care about every single kid. I heard Vincent talk earlier about, you know, about the need to make sure that we're looking after all kids in various species. Our people genuinely care. You cannot work in this profession if you do not care. I don't care how good you are, how smart you are. So our people, I know this for a fact, and I've done this work a long time, our people deeply care. The second thing that I think is really important as part of this idea of BRIM is that we've really, I think, tried to create a very sort of safe place where people can grow and be willing to learn and also to reflect, right? And so that's really important as well. I think I heard Dr. Herman talked about that earlier and puts it up in slides sometimes, is that you have to be willing to think about, can I get better? And am I willing to sort of grow when you're there? So if you deeply care and you're willing to do these things, then I think you're in a good place. And the reason I say that is because this is part of why we're trying to develop a culture in our school where it is safe for everyone, right? I know you're not here, but you can, and Irv's done this because Irv's been in our school a bunch of times. And I know you came to visit me last year. Just picture this for a second. I can't really show it to you, but I can just ask you to picture this, right? Between 8 o'clock and 8:30 every day is when buses and cars and people arrive, right? A lot of us arrive quite early in the morning. I've got some teachers that arrive at like 5:36. They know who they are. I don't think they're awake right now. They're probably asleep, you know, get ready for their 5:30 in the morning. But between 8 and 8:30, just is when everything happens. And so what you'll see at our school is lots of people, teachers, paraprofessionals, there's one of them in the room tonight, they all funnel out to various places and they get themselves ready to welcome all the kids into the school. All over this place, whether it's in the back playground area, the Shea Street, right in front of the buses, over by the preschool, right in the front entrance. And why do you do that, right? Because you're trying to create this sort of welcome every day that's repetitive for the 300 kids that are going to walk into the building. And Dr. Herman's right. There may be a conflict coming off the bus, right? Because not everyone's happy-dappy when they get off the bus every morning. We're right there ready to help and be prepared. So it's when 8:30 comes at 8:25, what you'll see in our school is kids in their classrooms, settled, ready to go, in their classrooms where we've really worked hard to figure out what are the expectations. But before that's happened, they've understood and we've taught what is the expectation when you get off the bus in the morning and you walk to your class through the hallway and you get to your class. The expectation is that you're kind to other people, you're walking, you're not running, you're looking at things in the wall if you whatever, but you can't touch and rip things off the wall. So we have set up these things and practiced these things over a period of 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. I have a teacher that works in our school, her name's Leslie Doherty. I hope you don't mind I mention her name here. Can you mention teachers' names? Leslie's in her 37th year. She's a special ed teacher. Some of you might know her. Leslie stands at this post in the school. It's near Mr. Prather's room where she can see 3 directions. Big hallway here and here. It's not a duty that she has, but she does it every day between 8:10 and 8:20 before she goes to class. She does it like she's a first or second grade or first or second year teacher who's trying to get, you know when you're trying to get your PTS and you're trying to improve the principal or show them that you're really keen and you're willing to impress and all that kind of stuff. Leslie does that every single day. She's not there to catch kids being bad. She's there to welcome people, but also to engage. And if someone's stepping out of line and doing something they shouldn't be there, she's there to help address that or get the right people to come and address it. So I tell you this again because Dr. Herman's right. It's not like everyone walks into David and it's perfect and there's no stuff. But this is how the framework's set up so that we can get to this place where people who care and are really deeply committed to think about it can do their work. I think what we wanted to mention to you, we have a few slides, Megan. Listen, this is all about our school improvement plan. I think we flashed through that. Alicia's got a couple of thoughts. If you could keep going, Megan. I mean, this is our care. So again, years ago, 15 years ago, we set up this idea where we really tried to figure out what are our core values. The other schools have got it too, but really what you're trying to do is not just say what they are, but teach those things. So we teach kids what it means to cooperate, to be respectful and empathy. What does it look like? What does it feel like when you're engaging with others in the building? Can you keep going, Megan? Again, this is just some of our stuff. You can't talk about PBIS or EH or BRIM reports without talking about social justice commitments. This is Waleska's library. It's the most beautiful library in Massachusetts. I don't care what anyone else says. It is, and I know the other schools got nice ones too. This is top drawer. We stole Waleska away from some school somewhere else. Keep going, Megan. Again, you can keep going. This is our SILT group. We're very good. So again, some of what I've talked about, right? 15 years to present. Listen, if and we've built a really strong team at our school. If we've got 70 bullying reports to give you tonight after being 15 years doing this, you all might want to fire our butts and not be impressed with us. That's why we don't have tons of bullying reports. We don't have a bullying report right now. We've had several in the last few years. I see the numbers are pretty low for the other schools. It looked like 6 and 4, but it was really 4-4 if 2 of them looked like they were not real ones or whatever. But these are some of the things that we've done to help get us to the place where and if you look at things like, we were created, I don't know if you remember the curriculum they had for sexuality and identity before. I forget what the name of it was, but it was so bad. And we created our own identity and health education curriculum, and we're getting a lot of plaudits for it. I think we've improved in lots of really different ways. Mindfulness is just some of the things up there.
That's a kindergarten class doing mindfulness.
Oh, that is kindergarten, that's right, it's amazing. But I think what Alicia was going to talk about briefly, is it the next one, Megan? Right, so.
No, that's you.
All right, so I'll just platform it. This is what I was talking about earlier, right? 521 referrals a whole bunch of years ago. And then we're trying to figure out 44% are in classrooms. So one of the things we figured out from that is that we can't have every single class having their own set of rules. When you go into a classroom, you can certainly have classroom rules that are pertinent to a few things, but there needs to be rules throughout the school that are the same for everyone. Because when you go to your 5th grade class, you need to know that when you go to Miss Lincoln's music class, you're transferring the same set of obligations as you go there, right? So we looked at these things and we saw, all right, that's where 44% were. And then we saw, look, 26% of the referrals were in the hallways, playground, lunchroom, bathrooms. And so we figured we've got to do some stuff. Not just talk about it, think about it, just put it in a chart or whatever. What does the chart data tell us? And what do we actually do about it? And I think there may be a slide, Alicia, is there? Right. So, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Alicia Lopez. So before I talk about this, I just want to say when I began at Crocker Farm a year and a half ago, I wrongly assumed that most of my time would be taken up, taking calls from teachers and going to classrooms to deal with, issues that were coming up. And
I have to say it's a very small percentage of my time, happily, because like Derek said, there's so many things in place, so many structures in place right now that that's not something that really happens. Teachers are very strong with all their tier 1 strategies in the classroom. So a lot of things get dealt with even before they come to our attention. There are multiple little conflicts every day that sometimes we never even hear about them. So basically, based on the deep dive into the data that the staff did, years ago, they took some very specific action steps. And so these were some of them. They created single bathrooms. So the bathrooms that are multi-stall are the teacher bathrooms, not the student bathrooms. The student bathrooms are all single. Because obviously, bathrooms, and coming from the middle school, that was always an area of, many, many problems. So that just avoids that happening. So single grades go out to the playground, 1 grade at a time. Teachers are assigned to take their classrooms out to recess. And why did we do that? We did that because the teachers know their kids, right? And they can intervene, they can watch, the different dynamics that are happening. So that's been another really effective thing. At Crocker Farm, the counselors, the mental health team runs the lunches. And, they're not just in there, twiddling their thumbs. They're in there actively walking around, interacting with kids, providing games and activities. They rotate the seating. And so that's another area where it's a relatively calm lunchroom. It's wonderful to see. And they have help in there from other staff and the lunch para. Breakfast was moved to the classrooms, so all the breakfasts are delivered to the classrooms and students eat right there. So again, avoiding that whole kind of unstructured cafeteria space. A whole new specials team was hired, and Derek, being an athletic person, is very focused on the team and creation of the team. And at Crocker Farm, there's a very strong team, and everybody's all in. That makes a big difference. The staff studied and implemented restorative practices so that the teachers are, all felt trained enough to do restorative practices right in their own classrooms.
Megan, do you mind switching the slide past that?
No, that's fine. I think that's all I was going to say, right?
Yeah.
Circles, too, is the other thing so along with restorative practices, the teachers were trained in running circles and do that in their classrooms all the time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've also done, is whether it be the second step curriculum, whether it be zones of regulation or the various other things that schools are doing. And for example, a couple of years ago, everyone decided to do this screener for social emotional. It's called DESA. I forget what it all stands for. And we have, again, simple things like 100% of our teachers complete this screener. It's a screener that you can do in like 2-3 minutes for each kid, and it helps the counsellors and people know when kids might be in need of help. 100% of our teachers do this 3 times a year. Not because they want to stay after school until whatever time to do this, but because they're committed to do it, right? And so these are the things when you get 100% commitment for people to step into this, you're going to see less bullying, you're going to see less like offensive behaviour in the playground and various other places. And so I think what we've realised is, and so here's another example. I don't know if you all remember this in your own school days. When a kid misbehaves, they get sent to the office, right? There's no such thing at Crocker Farm. You don't get sent to the office. You're not allowed to send kids to the office. If a kid's having a challenging time, and right now there isn't a lot of kids having, difficulties unless they've got support with one of their people, someone can pick up a phone or a walkie-talkie and say, listen, I might need a little help with someone, or someone needs whatever. The last thing you need in the modern day is to send a kid who sits in the office and waits for someone like me to walk up and address them and tell them they did something wrong and send them back. It's not how it works, right? So it's much more modern. It shouldn't happen in any school. You shouldn't walk into an office and see kids waiting to see the principal because they're in trouble, because it's not right. It's not the way it should be done. We've eliminated that. We had a few teachers, a number of years ago who kept doing it, and eventually, either they retired or they stopped doing it. And simple things like that can help shift just the narrative and the feel that goes on. If you don't mind, can I just finish with a couple of words?
Can I say one more thing? Just want to say about our mental health staff. As you know, we are lending our guidance counselor to to Fort River, and so we've been without a guidance counselor. But I just wanted to say that the rest of our mental health staff has been so amazing that they just step in and fill holes wherever it's needed, and that's the kind of teamwork that that you can see at Crocker Farm. And so, like for example, DeAndre Hinson, who's our school adjustment counselor, a couple weeks ago when Derek was pretty sick and wasn't there, every time I needed something, DeAndre was there. Like he just was, he just appeared in different places, and no one asked him to do things. He was just there. And so I just feel so strongly that the staff at Crocker Farm really all have that mentality, and that's what's helped make it what it is.
Yeah, so can I just read something that a student said at the end of last year? He's currently a sixth grader who's been in our school for 7 years, or this is his 7th year. Young African-American student who said his share of moments. And if you come into my office, you'll actually see a little chart in terms of his height growth. So we're not just talking about his social emotional growth here, but his height growth over the last bunch of years. But this is something he said when he was preparing for a little presentation in the end of 5th grade. So this is what he said. I may not read it as well as he when he read it, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. He says, it was a poem he was trying to put together, or he did put together. He says, I think we do have justice in our classroom, because do I feel equally treated like everyone else? Yes, I do feel equally treated in the classroom. Do I feel safe in my classroom? Well, and this is what he said. He said, sometimes I do bad things, but most of the time I do good things, and I do feel safe in my classroom. And this is a young man who said this, and I think he feels it, and he means it, and he knows it, right? Because as Dr. Herman said earlier, we're not trying to be Pollyannish to suggest that when 300 students show up to our school every day, everything's all rosy and everyone gets along. Young people will make mistakes of that age when they're 5 through 9, 10, 11, and we will help to address it. But you need to have a commitment to all of the various curriculums, whether it be iReady or whether it be social justice curriculums they're doing, so that kids can be in that place where this young person can say that. I agree with Dr. Herman. There needs to be alignment about how we... Bullying, I think, is quite easy, because if someone says, I'm bullied and they file a report, you investigate it. I think the EAH probably needs to be aligned as we move into the new school, particularly in the next couple of years, so that we're all using it for the right, not the right reasons, for the same reasons, so that the data reflects what we're collecting. But we all need to be doing all of these things as well, which I think other schools are doing, and that will allow us to be in a safer place where we don't have to be, I think, my good friend Vincent was addressing earlier, some bullying issues. We want to be able to reduce that and get to the point of almost eliminating that, because we have these sort of prevent measures in place.
I think I wanted to chime in and say that any educator would know that the one way to curb behavioral issues is strong routines and procedures. And so what you heard this evening was a description from Crocker Farm about how they built over time practices that are rooted in the culture and therefore sustainable, that when students come in, they understand the behaviors, they understand their expectations, and more so, it is a routine and procedure. And I remember in the one-on-one when I met with Derek and Alicia when I first came in, one of the things that Derek expressed was the fact that when he hires staff, and they had it up there as a bullet, Alicia hit on it, that they look for they listen for a certain thing, and whatever that ingredient is that they've identified is like a secret sauce, I think. That's what they look for when it comes to interviewing staff and identifying staff for Crocker Farm. And so it's not just the rooting into the expectations of students, but how do we work with our staff? And so that speaks to the culture in that school. And I think as superintendent, I would be remiss if I don't open the opportunity for the other 2 schools after this. So it's not just Crocker Farm. I think Wildwood and Fort River should also have the opportunity to speak to their culture and to what they do. Because each building, it is one district, but each building has an organic culture, belief system, and at the end of it, the passion lies in making sure the children that walk through their doors are successful. How they do it, it differs. But when you walk into each and every building, you know that the children are the first thing in front of them. Like that's it. Agenda number one: our children are successful. So I really want to thank Derek and Alicia for this evening. And again, like I said, the next day we had a very thorough conversation because I'm never ever too big to apologize for anything that occurs, and I did not want it to seem to the community and more so to anyone else, and especially to the principal, that that was what we believed. No, I firmly believe that there are a lot of great practices, but we have to identify the fact that we need to use them all with the same protocols and in a similar fashion, but they may need to meet the needs of the school buildings. So thank you.
If you don't mind, well, first thing I would say is I've been there at Crocker Farm at drop-off, and just the high fives and the hugs and that real sense of welcome, I think that's enormous for every student. So,
It's fun.
yeah, and thank you for walking through all of this. I do know, of course, sink and step in the zones of regulation. My son learned those at Fort River as well, so we're not meaning to diminish the other schools in any way. But I think it's important also to lift up the knowledge you've gained and share that across the district. If you don't mind, I think some of our committee members have questions. So if you'd stay for a moment. I'll start with you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much to Principal Shea and Alicia for this presentation. It's wonderful to hear about what a supportive culture you've developed over the years. And I wonder, well, it wouldn't surprise me if it's exactly because, Derek, you've been there for so long that there can be this continuity and dedication to really instilling practices and attitudes and expectations throughout your entire building, regardless of who's coming and who's going, and over the years. So kudos to you for that. I didn't really have a question for the Crocker Farm folks, but I do completely agree with Derek that I would hope we can align the practices or the reporting practices across the three schools, because we certainly don't want to miss any instances of bullying, and we don't want to be underreporting anything that's serious. But over-reporting isn't good either, especially if was implied earlier that it's going to stigmatize children and take a lot of time to investigate. And so I know we're learning, everybody's learning about this new platform, but I endorse that goal.
Can I just quickly, thank you so much, Sarah. Can I just say something about what you were saying about longevity? So longevity only really works if you're, I mean, halfway decent at what you're doing, right? And you've got to, so we shouldn't all just stay there for the sake of it. But the thing that's important about public schools that I've learned over the years, there's often in elementary schools, and certainly high school it's a little different, where there's maybe room for one or two assistant principals, whatever. But in our elementary school, I mean, I've been very fortunate. Shari Conklin, who's a teacher in the school, was my assistant for a number of years, went back to the classroom. Jen Smith was there for 4 years and is back in the classroom. Alicia has come with all sorts of amazing knowledge from various other places. But there's a whole bunch of teacher leaders in our school right now who are not called teacher leaders, but they're teacher leaders. And so what you have to try and do in I think, public schools, because there's only enough room for maybe like one principal or one assistant, is that you're trying to figure out a way where people can feel like they're, from the ground up, responsible for running the school and being part of it. And I think we have a lot of really gifted, talented people who are genuinely willing to be leaders in the school. And that makes our lives wonderfully smooth.
Irv?
Good evening. Derek and Alicia, I'm really great to see you this evening. And the thing is, in terms of Crocker Farm, there's no way I cannot be biased towards Crocker Farm. My kids went to Crocker Farm. I've known every principal that has been at Crocker Farm. I've served on the governance council, school governance council of Crocker Farm. And I also live in a neighborhood that has a substantial number of kids who go to Crocker Farm. And I've admired the leadership of Derek over the years, and I've also admired the leadership of Alicia over the years. That they both came together was an incredible um, plus for Crocker Farm. And I guess all that needs to be said is to listen to Derek and Alicia's enthusiasm for what they do. And that is something that cannot be taught. It cannot be taught. It's sort of like indicative of what Crocker Farm is. And I'm hopeful that um, everyone here who's listening to this and seeing this has an opportunity to visit Crocker Farm. Again, the parents who live in Crocker Farm, who have their kids, send their kids to Crocker Farm, are incredibly dedicated. And I mean, they are dedicated. I mean, I can't walk down the street without talking to one of them. And that is another big plus. It's a dedication and enthusiasm and commitment of those parents to Crocker Farm.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say to Alicia and Derek that I do appreciate all that you do, and that Crocker Farm is at the center of my thoughts. And I also see it as one of the core reasons why a lot of people move to Amherst.
Thank you, Irv. Very kind.
Can I say something
Yeah.
really quick? Thank you, Irv, and thanks, Sarah. I just want to say that the enthusiasm it's not made up. It's real. I live in the same neighborhood as Irv, and I see our students all the time, everywhere, and I actually love that. Also, just another. What Derek was talking about in the morning as students are coming in and all of that, it is a fun time of the day. Derek goes out to the front where the buses are. I go out to the back where parents drop off their students. And that kind of sets the day going. It sets the rhythm. And Derek didn't mention this, but we also kind of do rounds in the morning. And Derek, I think, makes it into every single classroom every morning and just checks in with the teachers, high fives a couple kids, checks on who's there and who's not. And I do the same, but not at the same pace he does. I go to fewer classrooms, but it's, I think that also helps set the tone of everything, and the way that the, teachers are just so used to both of us coming in and out of their classrooms shows how safe that they feel, I think, with us around.
Yeah, I just want to add something to what Irv was saying. I think, so Alicia and I were in a meeting after school today. It was a second grade and a third grade meeting. And this is for another topic, for another meeting, I think. But and the topic was mathematics coaching. And it was really around looking at iReady data of second grade and third graders. And the point of me saying this right now is that we were humbled in the meeting to hear about many of the successes of students over the last period of time. But we were also humbled to know that we still have to do better with a number of students who are continuing to struggle and not make the growth that other students are making. So that's the part, again, that was even most enjoyable today, was sitting there saying, all right, what do we need to be doing to get better at a number of things? Because there's a whole bunch of things that we need to improve. And for some of our youngsters who are not pushing up the way they should be in math, we sat there today for an hour with a team led by Jen Smith. Alicia and I were just watching this team of teachers grapple with how the heck are we going to get better at this, because we know we're not doing as well as we should.
Oh, thank you, Deb.
Thanks for coming and giving this presentation. It's been a tough month with the budget cuts, and trying to figure out a solution that's going to work, and to hear your work, to get a window into what it's all for, what my part of it is really valuable. And so I want to say that. I know the process was a little messy. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of people. Yeah. That's the nature of teaching and learning and transition and change. So I appreciate so much the communication that came about, and the ways in which it highlighted both the needs of the district and the needs and the differences in implementation in the schools and culture. So I feel like this process was productive, and I want to say thank you, and I want to say moving forward, it's important, and I think that when I dropped in unexpectedly as a brand new school committee member, you spoke to this. When this district transitions to a two-building district, it's going to be really important for Crocker's identity, for what is working for Crocker to be part of that conversation. So I want to say that now, and I want you guys to hold me to it because there's a lot of moving pieces. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, we can't fix the problems with the other school by disrupting what is working well at Crocker.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I know I don't want to get Dr. Herman annoyed at me here, but
Not at all.
I'll advocate for Crocker Farm being Crocker Farm another day. But that there's more meetings to come. We have to do that. But however it works out, I think ultimately when we end up with a new school and however Crocker Farm ends up being, there's going to be work has to be done to make sure that the buses and trains are all running on time, but that when kids start walking into that new school, that in the morning when they walk in off buses, we know where everyone's going and how they're going to be feeling and how they're going to behave themselves and these other things, whether it be, a different Crocker Farm or the new school. This is what we're all going to have to do together in the next year. But obviously we've got budget stuff first, and then I'm sure Dr. Herman will be assigning us to sort of really get on top of that, at some point soon.
Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Alicia.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
All right, so the next thing we were going to talk about is school choice. And we're required by law to have a school choice hearing and discuss whether we'll be open to school choice for future years, for the coming year, really. And then the question is not up for a vote tonight, but just something to us to start to discuss. And I think I'd start with just letting Dr. Herman let us know where we're at now and what types of observations she has so far.
I think for the elementary district, I'm not as concerned with school choice, and I say that in two veins. One, in terms of our resident students actually are the majority of the students in the classrooms in certain schools, right? So that's not my concern. My concern is us being able to programmatically fund everything that comes along with school choice. And so I haven't had an opportunity to sit with the team and actually do an analysis in terms of our numbers to determine what that looks like and how we benefit versus not. But I always think that if we are given the choice to have it, it works in our favor, where our schools then have the option to determine how many seats are available. So having school choice as an option for the districts is one that I would like us to have, and allow the principals to truly analyze and say, this is what we are able to actually, or the number of seats we're able to actually open up and sustain that will not impact impact us in any programmatic way. And I say that because we know that we're facing position cuts. And we know that, for example, I talk about Wildwood because I often speak to Wildwood and Forever more about their positions. And so we know that, for example, Wildwood, they're impacted by UMass. And so if they open up school choice seats and they fill up, because of how families come in and rotate with UMass, the resident students, I think up till last week, we had another resident student come into Wildwood. And so, giving the principals and myself the opportunity to determine the number of seats, if seats are available, is a viable option because we still are able to operate and still bring individuals into our district who would benefit from being with us. but at the same time, we need to be able to see operationally what we can truly sustain.
And go ahead. Deb.
Sarah's got some.
Okay, Sarah?
You're on mute.
Sorry, I don't want to jump the gun. It's just that this is a hearing, so I expect or hope you'll invite anyone in the audience who wants to make a comment about school choice. This is their opportunity to do that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Is anyone here with public comment about school choice? Yeah, thanks. We're a very small crowd in the audience today.
Yeah,
It's fun.
I can't see. I don't recognize everybody.
No,
So.
thanks, Sarah. Irv, what was on your mind?
Bridget, unfortunately, I have an urgent matter that I have to attend to, so I'm gonna have to get off of this call. It's just very urgent, so excuse me for it.
Irv, if you leave that does a quorum for us. Are you, if it's urgent, you must go, and I understand, but we've only
We
got
have
one
three
more.
members present.
We'll still have a quorum.
Are
We'll
we
have
okay with the quorum?
We've got three people present.
Oh, okay, then you go, please go. Thank you. All right. All right, Ben, did you have any questions on school choice?
So school choice, I love the idea of us as a committee letting the people who understand what the numbers in the buildings look like. I just want to make a plea for looking further out, because as we, one of the big advantages to having the 575 student building is that we don't end up with unwieldy sizes, either too small or too large, in two separate buildings. It gives us the opportunity to look at what the grade looks like for for that one building. So consolidating two schools into one allows us to look longer term at efficiencies. I do believe that choice enriches us. I just want to be thoughtful about the limitations to the funding that comes with those students.
The one thing that I haven't been able to find and I need to do deeper research in is around grandfathering in choice.
Yeah.
Because I think that too impacts our consolidation into one building,
Yes.
of the two buildings into the one building. And I want to say 3 into 2, because that's really what we're going to look at. It's really going to be 3 buildings into 2 buildings, because we're
Yeah.
going to have to redistrict. We're going to have to shift students around. And even though it's 575, it does not take into account that public school populations ebb and flow throughout the year.
Yeah.
So at one point we were really low in the beginning, but by the middle of the year, our numbers are really, really high.
Yeah.
And we're taking our 2 largest elementary schools and consolidating them into one. Technically, it's 2 buildings. So I'm hoping that we have the numbers to sustain all of our students moving forward. So I will take that into account.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm concerned about how the projections look, and that would be information I'd want to know before we were voting, like what it would look like, because the least redistricting we can do, the less children's lives are impacted, right? By switching schools, by having that interruption in their education, especially because we're going to also change the 6th graders. So there'll be a lot of moving pieces, and that's really stressful for little kids, right?
Stressful for big adults. So,
Right. Amen.
so yes, you're correct. You're correct.
So, but there was one other thing I'm thinking about, and it came up the last time we talked about it before your tenure, which was about the sending costs for kids who come into the district with special ed. And I just would want to feel like we're doing the appropriate billing to the sending districts, so we're being fully reimbursed for the cost. Because people come here because, like like we heard tonight, we have exceptional teachers who are there for every single kid. And we want to invite every single kid. But on the other hand, we want their home communities to also be helping to, not helping, but to support that cause, because that's how it's organized under mass law. So,
I will definitely look into that and make sure when we're ready, I can get that to the committee before.
thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. Yeah, I am also interested in whether strictly in terms of dollars, this is working to Amherst's benefit or not. But just about the hearing, I remind the committee that we only have to vote if we want to stop participating in school choice. So if nobody moves to end school choice, then we don't even have anything to vote on. But it's also my understanding that we can remain a participant in school choice, but not offer any seats, or
Yeah.
we can be just offer a few. So I don't think will be constrained if we remain in the program. But if we vote to leave it, then obviously that
Yeah,
ends.
thanks, Sarah. And one thing that I noticed is we have until June 1st as a committee to make a decision. But one thing that you do see is a lot of communities are putting out their applications in February. So, so there's a question of timeline. And while I'm sure we could accept applications and not go forward with school choice, or like you said, just take a few seats or whatever, probably in good faith, we want to try and make a decision in a reasonable timeline, especially if we weren't going to go forward. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. So anything else on school choice? Okay. Future agenda planning.
I just would like to note that I would like for Wildwood and Fort River to have the opportunity to also present to the school committee around what they do and their culture and stuff like that as well.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm just curious about when this committee is going to have all the time it wants to talk about the proposed budget, because the hearing, again, that's in 2 days, that's a chance for the public to speak. And according to the charter or our policy or whatever, if, let's say, there's an hour of public comment, then the school committee can't deliberate on that subject for more than an hour. So on the other hand, if there are 3 hours of public comment, we may not want to stay for another 3 hours to ask all our questions. So I just wonder, Bridget, whether you will mention this to Jennifer, or maybe you already know, like,
I'm taking notes right
we
now,
don't get to
Sarah,
have a
and
full discussion. The committee doesn't get to have a full discussion on Thursday when we're going to do that.
yeah, we will definitely do it soon, and I've taken note. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have anything for future agendas?
I'm not quite sure how to articulate it, but then I'm used to floundering up here, so I'll give it a go. Some of the town council subcommittee meetings discuss topics related to the schools without including members, representatives from the schools. And I would like, especially in this time of budgeting, with these JCPC issues and budget coordinating group, I would like to ensure that proper communication takes place. So, for instance, the agendas, when they come out, when they have things that are on the agendas written that concern the schools, the representatives that attend those committees can't go in prepared to make those presentations because they haven't been asked that information. They can't go in prepared to speak for the committees because the committees haven't discussed it. So there's a process part that I don't understand that I would like to resolve.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed those same dynamics in the committee meetings as well. And unfortunately, one thing that happens sometimes in the meetings is no one's there representing the schools, or we're representing the schools, but we're up against a lot of people who frankly don't have the accurate information or up-to-date information about the schools. And so we feel like it's a lot of pressure and work to send emails and say, hey, what's for JCPC and what's for this one and what's for that, to a team that we know is already busy. But I think we do a disservice if we're not really prepared to walk into those meetings and advocate for what the schools need.
And those meetings are oftentimes short notice, both in terms of time and content. I mean, they hit 48 hours and 26 minutes sometimes for posting. So I don't know really what to do with that, but I think if they expect informed conversation, there needs to be a process to make sure that happens.
Sarah?
Then can I suggest we ask our chair to communicate with town councilors or whoever needs to be communicated with and express, what is it? It's like nothing about us without us, please?
Nothing about us without us. I like
I
that.
like that.
All right.
I'm writing that exact thing down. Thank you, Sarah. All right. Any other comments or anything else on this topic? Okay. Then can I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it. Please
All
do.
right. Thank you. And Sarah, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay, Deb, how
Yes.
do you vote? And I vote yes as well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.